Hi everyone, Internet Thesis Book Reader here. Today I want to talk about One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad. In almost every turning point in our history, there will be places and people who are called on their moral integrity to stand on the right side of history. And there will be people who fail to do that to, at the very least, speak out against the atrocity. And so far, every attempt at hiding these atrocities will also fail because we build what we call as our humanity with the basis of our moral value, of do good instead of just not do bad. So there will always be people who call out these atrocities and make them public so people become more aware of them. Take Japan Unit 731 for example. It's a unit that captured about 3,000 Chinese, Korean, Mongolian, and Russian civilian, men, women, children. Then they perform inhuman experimentation filled with grotesque nonsense like trying to change the end location of human intestine to see what will happen, or cutting a person's head with the slowest method possible to see what would happen. Both resulted in death, obviously, and those are just a few examples of the very bad things being done there. When Japan surrendered after they were defeated in World War II, in one of their deals, America asked for the full documents from Unit 731, and both America and Japan kept its existence hidden. Only public rumor from the victim friends and family exists at that time. But time passed and eventually, new young people go into politics in Japan. One of them read about Unit 731 and was so appalled at what he read that he contacted the Shimbun Akahata, Japan's communist newspaper, eventually resulting in Seiichi Morimura writing The Devil's Gluttony that made everyone aware about Unit 731 and both America and Japan government cover-up action to them. And that is what this book is trying to do. It is a call to people, especially liberals, who claim to be on the good side all the time, who call out their opponent immorality on a regular basis, who suddenly have a different set of morals when it is about Palestine, when it is about the brown Arabs. The author was born in Egypt and then grew up at Qatar. At that time, he did not yet realize how much Western imperialism and intervention is happening in the country he is supposed to live in. But what he can see even in his adolescent mind, especially in Qatar, was how many Western expats was working there, living in gated areas where they never talk to anyone or learn the language of the city. They never integrate themselves to any of the community there. And that was just a normal thing in Qatar. That's why when he had the chance to go to Canada for college, he's surprised that in the Western world, there is a violent glee to their demand on how he and outsiders like him should assimilate better to their culture. But despite the occasional normalized Western racism and Islamophobia, he did believe that the West had the potential to be what they claimed to be, a force of good. He believed it so much that after 9/11 happened, he chose to be a journalist because he wanted to write stories that impacted the world, that showed people the truth. He eventually worked in Canada's The Globe and Mail, working as the correspondent for the Afghanistan War and also the Arab Spring in Egypt. He also don't know this yet, but he worked as an embedded journalist there with little control to what he can publish as the news. He had his suspicion about the Western liberal media he's working with because their covering are often contradictory. They claim what they are doing is being unbiased, but they often choose and pick how they are being unbiased. They are critical of their enemy, but when it is them that is doing what their enemies are doing, they either stay silent or try to tame down their language so their articles no longer represent the truth of what happened. This got worse when he realized that a lot of the liberal media he interacted with is often on the whims of their advertiser. This advertiser can go yell at the boss of their boss in person if they don't like how they were represented in the news. It's the same reason why Eurovision is so unfairly kind to Israel that kept breaking their rules over and over again. It's because they are sponsored by Moroccan Oil, an Israeli company that pretends that they're from Morocco. Meanwhile, artists that wear scarves on their hand or nails that look like a VF pattern is too much for Eurovision and they need to condemn them publicly. That spineless behavior of Eurovision is there on every liberal media. And the author can see this even clearer after the Nova attack in 7 October, where a concert that is done close to the concentration camp in Gaza got attacked by Hamas. The liberal media that has been silent about the oppression of the Palestinians that has been ongoing for almost a century suddenly is all busy condemning Hamas. They continue to condemn only Hamas when Palestinian apartheid evolved into a genocide that we can all clearly see because of the advancement of our communication technology. Some of these liberal media started banning strong words like genocide and apartheid from their publication, and some even started justifying killing babies. When Israel started spreading their usual lies, these liberal media, the same liberal media that made fun of their conservative opponent for not living in the same reality, immediately ran these lies without checking their credibility. Now, almost 2 years after publishing these reports, there is still not a single shred of evidence of them being true, because these are lies. At one point, American Democratic Liberal reader at that time, an old man that belonged in a home, also started saying some of these lies in his confused senile state of mind, saying that he's seen the photos of 40 beheaded babies. The White House has to run cover for him the next day because there is no such photos, or at least no photos of Israel babies being beheaded. What there is a lot of is photos of dead Palestinian baby. Photos of them alone, losing every single one of their friends and family, photos of their limbs torn apart, photos of their state of hunger because Israel has used starvation as weapon of torture and war against the Palestinians. None of this got aired in liberal news media. Instead, they focus on music artists like Niqab for saying something mean to the genocidal maniac state of Israel. They even use counter-terror agents to try to put them in prison. And the liberal media covered this news relentlessly as if wasting more time so they don't have to cover the genocide, as if doing so will make people less aware that there is a genocide. What they did instead is manufacture content for the genocide. They massage the truth and change its shape using words to describe events that doesn't even make sense anymore linguistically, despite calling themselves writers. When talking about Israel soldiers, they use kidnapped from a tank unironically. Meanwhile, when talking about what is happening to the Palestinians, liberal news will soften their language. Make sure to mention that this news is according to the Gaza Ministry. Never mind that there are videos, photos, witnesses, every evidence that they need that has been repeated over and over again every day, multiple times a day for years and decades now. And as someone who believes in what he did as a journalist despite the flaws of the system in where he works, where he can always say the truth of what happened, seeing the liberal journalists that he used to work with kept defending the constant targeting of Palestinian journalists that made Palestine into the deadliest place for journalists ever in history, that not even war wars and fictional dystopia can compare to it, is disappointing to say the least. This is not even talking about the fact that right now, near half the Palestinian left is under 18. Children in the eyes of most Western world that kept droning about think of the children. But apparently it's think of the children, but only if the children are the right color. But they can self-reflect, do better. Take Japan during World War II again for example. They did so much atrocity that a Nazi member, you know, the fascist party of German who committed many atrocities themselves. Anyway, a guy named John Rabe read what the Japanese are doing and was so appalled at what the Japanese are doing at Nanking that he decided to help the Chinese by creating a safety zone for them. His kindness had not done well for him at first because the Nazi party kicked him out for not being bad enough and the rest of the world shunned him for being an ex-member of the Nazi party. And he and his family lived in poverty for a while. It was the people he saved at Nanking that eventually helped him. They collected money and food and sent their town mayor to John's house to help him feed his family, and they also built a memorial at their village to remember the kindness that he gave them in their time of need. What I'm trying to say that if among Nazi all sane person would agree are some of the most horrible entity there is still people like John Rabe who can saw atrocity and decided to act upon his moral conscience. Then liberal Zionists, people like Contrapoint, Jesse Gender, and more, should be able to see through their facade of moral superiority. They compare themselves only to the right-wing's virtues, so the bar for them is only slightly above the bedrock of hell. Instead of thinking about the tears you shed in future videos about the Palestinian tragedy, do it now. The author says it well in this book. Be less spineless in calling out atrocity. Don't sit it out and wait until you can call them out in hindsight in 10 or 20 years later. The worst thing that can happen to you if you're wrong is people yelling at you and your pride will be slightly injured. The worst thing that can happen to the Palestinians right now is happening in front of your eyes, a genocide. As a result of this fakeness that oozes out of these liberals, in America, Donald Trump won the election since he at least did a lot of what he says even when what he says is bad. But a lot of people, mostly young and dumb and white people, will be attracted to Donald Trump not because he's a force of good, but merely because he looks less fake compared to the current Democrat that can't even stand having a Muslim socialist Arab won the New York mayoral candidate. Then instead of blaming themselves for losing, they blame the people who cannot stand daily babies murders. You want to be the good guy? Then for once in history, actually make America the good guy. Yeah, liberal always say to people to read more, to educate yourself, to be better. How about read this book? Maybe that'll help you be better. Because while the main focus of this book is on the genocide in Palestine and the liberal going la 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 la, can hear it, can see it, it is also a memoir of his own fear and worry for his daughter in the rise of Islamophobia and racism toward brown people like him and her, and how small that fear is compared to the genocide that is ongoing by the minute and by the hour of every day in Palestine. I give this a 4.75. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.